So at this point, you've got a character who has a personality type. Those are the patterns of what they do, what they say, what they think. We've got their skills, we know what they want, and we've started to plan ideas according to the 5 story ingredients about who the character is, what they want, why they can't have it, what they do about it, and then what changes because of what they do. Now we're in our pre-writing stage of the writing process, and you're going to think that I love the number 5 for some reason, because we've got 5 ingredients to every great story. We've got the 5 phases of the writing process, and today we're going to talk about the 5 main core elements of the structure of a story. They are the setup, the path, the challenge, the transformation, and the wind down. Now, maybe you are familiar with the idea of the hero's journey, and depending on the version of the hero's journey that you've heard about, you've maybe heard anywhere between 8 to about 21 different parts of a story in a hero's journey. I've simplified them down to 5 that I find are the most effective for people to get going, and if you need to add more bits along the way, you can always do that, but I find these are the 5 that you need to prioritize and make essential. So, we've got the setup, the path, the challenge, the transformation, and the wind down. These are kind of 5 different sections of the story where you will tell us who the character is, what it is they want, why they can't have it, what they do about it, and then what changes. So the setup, when does this begin? Well, the setup, this first part of the story, it begins with the first word of your story, and it ends as the main character or the potential hero leaves their known world and enters the unknown world. What do I mean by this? Well, at the start of a story, we have the world that a character knows, the world that they're familiar with, what's normal to them, what they know about, where they are now, the status quo. And basically, their want, often they discover what it is that they want in this setup. So the big jobs you have in the setup here are to reveal what it is the character wants and to show us what their normal world as it is right now is like. Now, at some point, they're going to realize that they can not have what it is that they want where they are in their known world, and they must decide to leave or enter an unknown world. Now, this known and unknown world, that's easy to imagine in sort of like a large fantasy novel where a character goes from a normal world into a fantasy world. But in fact, the character could still be in the exact same place. Let's use a school, for example, and they've got one teacher, and then that teacher goes away, and then there's a new teacher who shows up. Well, that new teacher, let's say we go from having a nice teacher to a very mean teacher, same classroom, same character, same place, but totally different world with new rules and all this sort of stuff. So it might involve an actual physical change in worlds, but it might not. It might just mean that the situation has changed. Once they leave their known world and enter the unknown world, we begin the path. This is the second part. And it begins as the hero enters the unknown world, and then it ends when the hero approaches the final obstacle that is in their way. So the character is now in their unknown world, and they are going after what it is that they want, and there are things that are getting in their way, and there are some things that are helping them get closer to what it is that they want. Now, at some point, though, the character has to be faced with the final obstacle that is in their way. And this is where we move on to the challenge, the third part. It begins when the hero faces that final obstacle that stands in their way of having what it is that they want. And it ends as the hero knows and decides to make the necessary change that they must make within themselves. Now, the world, we're still in the unknown world here, and their want, they're finally kind of facing what it is that they want and what's in their way of having it. But the character has to realize in this challenge that there's something about them that must change, something they must let go of, something that they must start doing. There's some kind of change about them that is necessary, and it must become obvious to them in this challenge. Next, we move on to the fourth part, which is the transformation. It begins when the character makes the necessary change and they are able to get what it is that they want, by overcoming that final obstacle thanks to that change. And it ends when the hero leaves the unknown world. The hero is now changed in some way. They have transformed. They've proven themselves to be a hero, and they've been able to get what it is that they want, most likely. Now, I say most likely because it's possible that the character ends up with something that they didn't realize that they needed even more than what they want, but that's for you to play with. So basically, the character is in this unknown world. They've changed who they are, and they now have what they want, and they're returning back to their known world where we started the story. And this brings us to the final part, the fifth piece of a story, the wind down. And this begins when the character re-enters the known world and ends with the very last word of your story. And this is the wind down, that ending of the climax. And this is often the shortest portion of the story. And basically what we need to see here is that the character is different than we saw them when they were in the setup. The character in the wind down is now more mature, more grown, more developed. There's something about them that has changed when we compare them back to who they were in the setup. They're in the same place. They might be facing similar situations, but we see the change in them in some way. So those are the 5 sections of a story: the setup, the path, the challenge, the transformation, and the wind down. Each of those 5 have different jobs for you to do, and each of those 5 can be different lengths. You will begin to notice that certain stories, the setup is very short. Some stories, the setup is very long. In some stories, the path is very short. In some, it's very long, etc. It could be the same with any of these. It's up to you to decide how long this section is. And my only rule that I would give you is to say that you make it as long as you need to make it, or as short as you need to make it, in order to help you show to your audience who your character is, what it is that they want, why they can't have it, what they do about it, and what changes because of what they do. There you have it, the most essential elements of the hero's journey. You are welcome to add more to it, but if you've got those 5, you're guaranteed that your story will at least be full and complete. Now you can add on any extra decorations to that you'd like.